Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre. Today, for the hour, we have Anne Griffin, whose debut novel, When All Is Said, is an international bestseller. And I didn't write a blurb for this book, but I should have because it had me crying all the way through, starting on page 8. This is a true story. This is a book that is beautiful, it's sad, but it's ultimately incredibly life affirming. Anne, welcome. How are you?
I am just thrilled to be here. It's just lovely. What a great new experience for me. I've never done this before, so I'm delighted to be in this virtual world with you all.
And of course, we're because the subject of your book, you're from Ireland. The book takes place in Ireland. We're of course
That's
in an
right.
Irish pub today,
So
and
apt. It's
yes,
wonderful.
we're completely full. We've been full for the last 30 minutes. It's wonderful to see so many people here. Since we have you for the hour and you only have one novel out, we can do a lot of reading to get a feel for the beauty of this book. And I would say let's start right away
Absolutely.
today before we do our normal introductions and housekeeping. Um, we decided on a bunch of excerpts. So let me set up the first excerpt real quick. The book, and you can see it here lying around the English version and even the German version. Here I have a lot of props around. The book is narrated by an old man, an 84 year old Maurice Hannigan, and he's sitting at a hotel bar in Meath County, Ireland, which is around the corner from Dublin. I
Hmm.
looked at Google Maps. He's talking in his head. This entire book is him talking to his son who left Ireland for a career in America, and
Hmm.
he is reminiscing about his life, and the life is full of tragedy, full of joy, full of conflict, full of hardship. Growing up, he grew up poor farmer. He had to work from the age of 10.
Hmm.
There's a lot of, like I said, conflict. The conflict is unresolved, and the scene that you'll be reading, though, we're
Hmm.
starting off with a little bit of a lighthearted scene. In this scene, he visits the parents of his girlfriend, Sadie, who later will become his wife.
Hmm.
They've only been together for a few months. And so he goes up from the south of Ireland to the north of Ireland, Donegal,
Uh-huh.
which is Northern Ireland. And unbeknownst to him, Sadie's sister Noreen
Hmm.
is in a mental institution.
Yeah.
We're not sure what the diagnosis is,
Hmm.
but the symptoms include severe outbursts and mood swings. So the parents have decided to put her in there. Our hero Maurice, I think he must be about 20, I guess, at this in
Yeah.
this scene, right?
Yeah, he would be.
Uh, he knows nothing of this, and then he visits the parents, and the parents say, "Okay, we're going to visit Sadie's sister in a mental institution,"
Yeah.
and Sadie's parents are just as he is, on edge because also Noreen is not doesn't really take to new people.
No.
Um, and so they drive up to the institution and they leave him in the car. But then soon thereafter, Sadie comes in and says, "You know what? Noreen wants to meet you." She basically has a
Mm.
proof. So he goes in the institution and he meets Noreen for the first time. And that's what we're going to read.
Great. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for a great introduction to the book. That's brilliant. So,
Yeah, and we'll read a lot of tragic stuff later on. But I thought, Anne, we let's start off with something because the book is also really funny, and so it's all in there. So
okay.
here's the scene.
Okay.
Uh, Anne Griffin from her book When All Is Said.
Thank you so much. I followed anxiously, expecting to find a younger, sadder Sadie. But the woman before me, sitting by the window, bore no resemblance to your mother at all. Smiling broadly, her face didn't seem to fit with the family. Her dark hair was worn straight to her shoulders with a fringe. She was plump with sallow skin and brown eyes that suggested a youth and beauty that could have been foreign. Morris, she said, rising from her chair, coming to embrace me as if we were old pals. I looked to the others for guidance, but each looked back at me completely baffled. I patted her shoulders cagily. Lovely to meet you, Noreen. You seem well. She said nothing, but still held on to me, her head on my shoulder. It was Sadie who came to peel her away when she stayed in that position longer than was comfortable. She didn't protest, but neither did her eyes leave me. They clung on. She insisted I sit on her bed beside her as she sat at the window. And while she said very little else, every now and again her hand would stretch over to my arm, where she would leave it, feeling the fabric of my shirt. It didn't upset me, and I was in fact comforted by her touch. And so when I saw Sadie rise to intervene, I motioned for her to sit. I glanced at her parents, and they, like Sadie, seemed ill at ease with Noreen's goings on. They sat on the edge of their chairs, tense and ready to pounce. But after a while they settled, their conversation growing more natural. And I sat listening to the news of the village, becoming lost in it, enjoying learning about Anna Moe and all who lived there. Every now and again, though, I began to feel a slight tapping, or it was more like a tickle against my leg. I paid no heed at first, as it was so brief, but then it began to annoy me, and I looked down to swat away what I was sure would be a fly. Noreen, no! Mammy, she's at it again. Noreen, take your hand out of there, Sadie protested. The level of disgust was such that I didn't associate it with me at first, but on following Sadie's eyes, I saw Noreen's hand lift out of my pocket of my jacket that had lain over my leg. Drawing her hand close to her face, she peered at what she had taken and laughed. Of course, you can guess what she was at. How well did you know her games? Sparkle, sparkle, she said, like a little girl whispering a secret. Noreen! Oh, Morris, I'm so sorry she does this. She loves money, coins. She was forever going through our pockets at home like that. It's the silver ones, really. Now, Noreen, give those back to Morris. They're not yours, Sadie said. She was up at this stage, in front of Noreen, scolding her. Sparkle, sparkle, Noreen said defiantly, turning to the window, ignoring her sister. She stared at the shilling she held in her hand, letting the coppers fall. Sadie and her mother leapt to rescue my farthings and halfpennies as they hit the hard floor. Morris, I am so sorry. We've tried to teach her, Sadie's mother assured me. There's not a bother, Mrs. McDonough. Don't be worrying, I said, joining the bent head scrambling around for my few pennies. Now, Noreen, it's not yours. Give it back. Her mother's muffled instruction rose up to her daughter, who I noticed was having none of it. I turned an amused grin to the dark-haired divil beside me. You like the shiny ones? Well, aren't you clever, going for the ones that are worth more? It should be you working in the bank and not your sister, I said, laughing a little. Noreen's laugh erupted, nearly blowing me back with the force of it. Such a fine appreciation of my wit, I thought, before realising she hadn't even heard what I'd said. Her happiness was about the coin, nothing else. As the others returned to their chairs, her manic laugh continued. They sat as tense as before, like runners waiting for the race to start. Mrs. McDonough glanced at the father and tilted her head toward the door and to the help that might be on the other side. It all seemed a little extreme to me. But what they knew, which at that stage I didn't, was that the return of the shilling would be a hard-won battle should I ask for it back. Suddenly, with no warning, Noreen stopped laughing. Its abrupt halt as startling as its eruption. Then her free hand reached for my arm to feel the shirt fabric once again. Despite all the worried stares, I put my hand on hers. You keep that, Noreen. I might not always have one to give, but you can have that now as my gift. Sparkle, sparkle, what? I patted her hand. Sparkle, sparkle, she replied, and laid her head on my shoulder. To this day, despite the many conversations had on the subject, no one can quite figure out why Noreen took to me as she did. No stranger was ever given the welcome of our first meeting. It's my irresistible charm. It worked on her sister, didn't it? I offered in explanation as we drove back to Anna Moe after the visit, taking a sneaky peek to my right at your grandfather, breathing an internal sigh of relief on seeing him grin.
And that's Anne Griffin reading from When All Is Said, the first encounter with Noreen,
Mm-hmm.
the institutionalized sister of the wife of our hero Maurice Hannigan. Oh, there's a
Yes.
big applause here in world.
Ooh,
So,
thank you.
and I should have actually also said that the father of Sadie is a cop. And
Yes.
so, I mean, I guess, it's so relatable when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you introduce them to in this case, the future in-laws, and you get that, the raised eyebrow and
Yes.
just,
Yes.
have you
Yes.
have you drawn from your own
No, no, my
experience?
father-in-law is not a policeman. No, or that I have not had an experience where I brought someone home to introduce him to my father, and there was those stares going on. No, no, I have to say, all has been very good with relation to my boyfriends and bringing them home. They've been welcomed with open arms. So no, but it was just. It was a nice comical scene to write when Morris first meets the father. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. And as you say, Drax, I think, this book there is sadness in this book, as there is in life, but there are a lot of laughs as well. And Morris is one of these really funny characters who's cantankerous and knows his own mind and just doesn't let people away with stuff. He says what he feels. And
Yeah.
and that makes for a lot of nice reading, because some of my
In the
favorite
very
books.
beginning, I thought, oh, here's the grumpy. I mean, I love the character, but I thought, he's gonna be the super grumpy old guy who's
And he
like,
is.
"Ugh." And he has a little bit of that, but it's just much more nuanced, and especially here where he connects to Noreen, who has these
Mm,
psychological problems. I
yes.
I worked in a psychiatric institution when I did my
Wow,
civil
okay.
service as a young man, and
Mm,
it was really interesting how certain clients took to certain people, and others they didn't. It was,
mm.
they have their own sort of sensitivity meter, or
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose as humans, we all have that instinctive feeling once we meet somebody, and without us really knowing that we're judging, we really, we really are, and we find a comfort. There's a comfort with certain people, and yeah, it's going to be no different from anybody who's in an institution, and perhaps they're even more sensitive to that. You know.
I'm going to throw out our quick housekeeping notes, and then we'll do a proper uh, introduction. We'll talk more about the book. Again, this entire book is Maurice, the 84-year-old man, narrating
Mm,
to his is an interior monologue. He's narrating to his son Kevin, who is in America, um, and that is, I mean, in matters of form, this is also super interesting. But let's do a quick housekeeping notes. The book club is every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time, Second Life time, as we call it. We have 2021 completely booked, but I'm going to open up more dates. There's also other shows. There's the Mystery Hour with Con Sweeney once a month, and we have a get together with Anne Charnock and Yvonne Battle Felton, which is an informal writers sort of hangout where we do work in progress stuff.
mm,
If you're interested in suggesting an author, please email me slbookclub@draxtor.com. The show is produced by Strawberry Linden and myself. Big thanks to Marianne McCann, Arden Schwartzman. Uh, they make props and environments. Kralos customizes avatars. Silas Merlin makes avatars from scratch. Arieto Kiori, who is in the audience today here, she put this whole region together, this Irish region, which a little farm outside. We can visit it later. And yeah, I think that is all that we have. Oh yeah, AJ McDowell makes special coffee cups with the SL Book Club logo on it. So, Anne, you are
mm.
a debut novelist.
I am.
Well, debut in terms of novels, you worked yourself up from short stories, I learned. You
Mhm,
have a degree in history. You
mhm.
worked for Waterstones, which is a chain in all over the UK, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Book
yeah, and
chain.
in Ireland, yeah.
Then you went back to school for a postgraduate degree in youth work, and
I did.
then you write a novel at an age that is similar to me, which is amazing because then I feel there's hope for me. And actually, we already had a member here of the community ask me, and I
Mhm.
have this question here on my sheet. How was it for you to write this novel? Tell us a little bit about it. Was it terrifying? Were people saying to you, "You're too old, forget about it"? Was it hard to sell it? What
Well,
was it like?
yeah, great question. I think at any age when you're writing your first book, you don't really have huge expectations. You hope, you definitely have hope that someday somebody might want to publish it. But it was actually a really nice and relaxed time because you're just writing this book for you and you're just enjoying it. And what I did with this book was I was going to start an MA in creative writing in University College Dublin, and I decided I wanted to bring the first draft of this book into that MA, and basically I workshopped this book for a year with those fellow
Wow.
students. So it was actually really good. I found it really, really helpful. And what was lovely in that MA was it was a group of very diverse ages. So you'd people from 21 up to in their mid 60s. And we were all there to find out how to become professional writers, and how to improve our skills. So writing at this age, I didn't in any way find it scary. I am a person who believes in reinvention. I've had 4 successful careers prior to this. I have never been afraid to work myself up from the bottom and take huge pay cuts. Now I can only do that because I have a partner who, has a job, so can keep us fed.
Hmm.
But there have been moments in his life when I have done the same for him. I've gone out, done the work. He's been able to go back to college. So it's. I remember Anne Enright, who taught me in university, said it's really good to have a great partner when you're a writer,
Yeah.
because there are going to be years and years of just desert and nothing and not succeeding, and you need somebody beside you who is just going to keep supporting you and keep food on the table when you need it.
That's why I married a lawyer when I wanted to become a professional musician. That was a good
So
idea.
clever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very
Thank you.
impressive.
Very
Yeah,
clever
well
I am.
done. Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
That's
now
exactly
I've been on trial for 20 years.
it. How's it
Sorry.
going? How's that going for you?
Sorry, I rudely interrupted you to
No,
place this
no.
joke that I've been working on for 2 weeks, workshopping, as they say.
Well, I think it worked very well. Yeah. So keep going, keep going. Your career as a comedian, I can see, is budding.
But this
But
is interesting that and were you afraid? So it wasn't really also a concern if this was going to be a huge success, because that's kind of a total, gamble anyway, right? So
yeah,
nobody really
yeah.
expected that.
I mean, it's your greatest wish that you will get your book published, but you're also very aware that that's a really difficult thing to do. And I, like every other writer in the world, spent a year getting many rejections, writing 2 submissions a week, and
Wow.
and so I, like every publisher in Ireland, said no, or else I didn't hear back from them. So then I looked to the UK, and in the UK, and I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but in the UK, the best way to go about trying to get published is getting an agent first. So I started on, bombarding agencies, and I was getting nowhere until a small little agency, which traditionally had done sci-fi actually, but we're expanding into other literary genres, took a punt on me. And within a month of that, I was very lucky. It was the time of Frankfurt Book Fair, so at that time, publishers are looking for new blood, and my book just landed on a couple of desks, and it was immediately, I was in a bidding war before I knew it, which is lovely. And actually in Germany, it went into a bit of a bidding war as well. And so it was like, from nowhere, from feeling like, I am absolutely getting nowhere. I went into a bidding war in the UK and in Germany, and it has now been picked up in 20 foreign languages. So you know, like that's the stuff of
That's
dreams.
amazing. Exactly, because that's what I wanted to remind folks. It's being translated in over, you were saying 21 languages. I think your website still
20, yeah.
says only 16. But it's
It
such
does
a
that.
universal.
Just changed it.
It's it's interesting. I mean, it's an Irish dude. He's sitting there,
Yeah,
he's drinking stout and whiskey, and he's on a bar at a bar, and it's
yeah,
about he's born in 1930. He has to
yeah,
work as a child
yeah.
labor, being abused by
Mm,
these people that he works for, emotionally, and I don't know if he gets well, he
it's
gets beaten
difficult.
up by the
He
by
gets
this
beaten up.
bully.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, there's a universal appeal to it. I have here on you're answering my next question here on the run sheet, actually, which
Okay.
is uh what is the book about and why should folks read it instead of binging on Dairy Girls, which is also about Ireland. But allow me to read a few comments here, which is interesting. In the local chat, the comments are coming in. This is a concrete question. What is more difficult, or what was more difficult for this novel for you? Was it more difficult to start it, or to finish it? And then also Ghostspeed, who is a published author here in the audience in SL, he says, I self-published my first novel at the age of 52.
Hooray. Yay.
Fantastic. And Squid says, I'm currently in university studying English, which is focused heavily on literature, and it involves a ton of writing, especially story writing. What do you think is the best way to get inspired about writing and stick to it? So,
Yeah.
first, real quick
Okay.
about the starting and finishing.
Okay. I think the hardest bit of the book is the middle.
Hmm.
Honest and I again another quote from Anne Enright. I remember she used to say to us, "People, watch your middles. Your middles are sagging here." And so what happens is what happens is you start out with great enthusiasm, and if you know your ending, you know where you're headed. You know that's where I want to get. But somewhere in the middle, around 30 or 40,000 words in, you start going, oh, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get us over there? I want to get there. And it's almost like you want to get there too quickly. And you've really got to work on that middle. And I remember that was my most difficult bit. I knew my start and I knew my
You
ending. But
knew the ending. I was just going to
yeah,
ask. I mean, the
yeah,
ending
I
is, we're
did.
not going to give away the ending.
No,
You told me when we first did a pre-interview for this, you
yeah.
told me. And the funny thing is, I actually forgot what you told me. I told you, oh, now you told me. And oh, I just realized our region is going to be restarted. That doesn't matter. I will ask the folks to come back, but we'll keep talking. And
Okay.
Strawberry, our producer in the back, she'll throw up a placeholder image, so the stream will go on YouTube, and then folks can come back when the region restarts. It restarts in 3 minutes. But so keep going. So how did you get over the
Uh,
middle?
um, by
Did you want to
by
give up?
no, I never wanted to give up. I wanted to get it right. I was determined to get it right. And I tell you how I got over the middle by rewriting scenes, by listening to the feedback. I was very lucky. There were 12 other students sitting in that room and they were giving me feedback. And so I think it's really key when you're writing and when you're struggling, you hand your stuff over to somebody you trust, and that could be a writing group you're in, that could be fellow students, that could be a trusted friend. Now, not a friend that isn't willing to tell you what's going wrong in your work. You've got to, when I say trust, you're trusting that these people will give you the critical feedback. And so then just going back and reworking based on what they're saying and based on what your own feeling is around what they're saying. Because you mightn't agree with everything they say.
Right.
Um, but so
Well, if
just
they hit a nerve, I guess with advice, it's always like if this is something, a nagging doubt maybe in you,
yeah,
and then somebody kind of confirms that. I mean, it could go both ways. You go like, oh, he's confirming my doubt, which,
yes.
but you could be self-doubting yourself for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. I mean, it is. I remember once on having this discussion with my fellow students, and we were saying, you've actually sometimes got to trust your own instincts. So sometimes somebody could be saying, "Listen, drop that." For example, in one of the workshops, somebody suggested, why don't you drop this structure you have? Because the thing about the book is it's based around 5 toasts. So it's 5 toasts to 5 people who meant the most to Morris. And so somebody said, drop that structure. And I was like, no, I'm not dropping that structure. That's the key to this book.
That is the key to the structure. See, this
Yeah.
is what I mean. So this is interesting. Somebody suggested that, and did you then ask that person why to kind of back up that?
Um, no, because it was in a big group discussion, and I couldn't go back to kind of say, why do you feel that? Or else my memory is not allowing me remember exactly what the post discussion around that was. I don't recall there being a big discussion around it. So sometimes you've got to trust your instinct and know, no, this is actually integral to what I'm doing. And people did suggest that perhaps I might want to change the ending. And again, that was something that I knew, no, this is key to what I'm doing, and I will never change that ending.
So going back to the question of Squid, who is in the audience, and we have about 100 seconds until restart, which just means then, everybody please come back, including you, Anne. We'll just keep talking. All you need to do is to quit Second Life, and then you just come back.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest. And yes, and we'll bring you in here, but we can keep talking.
Okay.
Squid was asking about, and she's studying it, and I guess her question was, how do you get inspired and stick with it? This question comes up a lot. How do you know something is worth continuing? I mean, idea-wise, I'm talking, right? So if you have an idea, and I had Liz Jensen on a few years ago, a British writer, and she told me that she once spent, I think, more than a year and a half on 3 ideas that she tossed in the bin.
Yeah.
But she's an accomplished writer, so I guess
Yeah.
she has built up an intuition where she was very certain that this wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you just that happens all the time, and I've got quite a few short stories that I've just let go because it just isn't working, and it may be that particular time in your life that it's not working right there and then. You've just got to go as far as you can with it, and when you feel like you've lost it, step back from it, step away from it for a while. But
Sorry,
feedback,
1 second, and let me
yeah,
just interrupt you. Please quit Second Life now, then
okay,
we'll come back at the same spot. So you
okay,
can quit now, and we'll continue to
perfect, yeah,
talk on YouTube. The YouTube stream is up. We got and Facebook and Twitter. We have a lot of people watching. So we'll come back, but please continue. And once you're logged off completely of Second Life, I'll tell you when to go back. But please
okay,
continue.
okay. Continue talking.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just you'll have to bear with me as I'm trying to get this back up again. So yeah, I think very often putting something aside for a little while is a really good thing to do, but also trusting in the feedback from other people. Again, it's that thing of having that circle of people or that 1 or 2 people that you trust and talk it over with them. Yeah, I mean, everybody comes up against a project where they're not sure or their doubts are sitting on their shoulder and just beginning to shout at them. I think every writer goes through that. In fact, I know every writer goes through that. And yes, sometimes people will have 50,000 words written in a novel and they decide to leave it. And, sometimes you just have to leave that for a little while, a long while, or you just move on to something else. So it's really hard it's a very, very individual experience, and just take advice and talk to people who are writers, talk to trusted friends around
This
it.
reminds me of a friend of mine who is a very well-known musician and producer, and he was very frustrated with he was working very hard on his music career, and it just the band split up, and he was kind of
Mm,
screwed over by his partners. And then when he was 25, he went to his mother, and he said, "Oh my God, I've had it. I've been trying so hard. I think I'm gonna give up." And what he wanted to hear from his mother was, "No, son, keep going." And you know what his mother said? She said, "Good, finally you get a real job." So, I mean, it
That's what
could go
every
both.
parent will say.
Maybe so. I guess what we learned from that is you go to a trusted friend rather than maybe a parent.
Yeah, I think somebody who's in the field. I mean, somebody
Hmm.
who is, going to give you good advice, going to tell you their journey, because their journey will undoubtedly have been full of these moments of doubt and worry and fear, and am I doing the right thing? Every single writer will have gone through this. There is not one writer out there who has written a book, it was a bestseller immediately, and they have gone on to have bestsellers every time. You know, people have written mediocre books after writing three bestsellers, or have, just had a big hiatus before they bring out the next book, because that is it. To be a writer, you are full of doubts
Yeah.
about your own abilities, and you need people around you, and we're very solitary people,
Yep.
writers.
Yep.
That's why COVID might have suited quite a few of us, because we've been self-isolating for years, really. And so more than any other profession, we need other people, not other people around us all of the time, but certainly we need our trusted people, the people who will be honest and also kind to us, because we
Right.
are our own worst critics. So we need that critical voice to be a kind critical voice, and to be a helpful and supportive, and helping you look at ways you can solve your problems within the book.
And if you're just tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, this is the Second Life Book Club every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Pacific time, 8 p.m. GMT. We're talking with Anne Griffin, who is a bird in world. And as the region will take a few minutes to restart, and then we'll all come back to the pub, drink a few more beers, and keep talking about Anne's book when all is said. And you just wait for my lead when you log
Sure.
back in, and you will magically reappear in the same venue. Um, be, because you're talking about this, this uncertainty, or just these sort of self doubts, which
Mm,
are inherent in any creative person. Do you,
yeah.
with the enormous success of this first book, and I
Mm,
know this from the music field, there is enormous pressure, uh, some oftentimes from outside, for the follow up. Now,
yes.
are you going to seclude yourself for 10 years and not write another book? You
um,
feel this pressure?
oh, absolutely. And I have written my second book, and it's actually going to be available in April of 2021. But I have felt that pressure every minute of every day since my first book came out. It is just, I think it's just inevitable. I had been working on the book before my When All Is Said got published. The new one, by the way, is called Listening Still. And it's been tough. And yes, to take and to use that tired phrase of the difficult second album, it is difficult, and you are dealing with your own demons more than anything else. And you are looking at the successes of your first, and you are, rereading the reviews of your first, and you're thinking, oh God, will I deliver on the second? And I think you have to come to a place of acceptance that, the second book you write is the best you can do at that particular time. And that's the
Yeah.
place in which I'm at right now, that I've had to I'm battling with those demons and saying, you guys need to go away now, because what this is my best right now. And I was reading an article, an interview with David Mitchell, who wrote,
Oh, David Mitchell is the
isn't he just
greatest. Oh my God.
superb, and such
Yes.
a great
The
guy.
bone clocks, the bone
Oh,
clocks. I'm obsessed with it.
just amazing, and such a great guy. I was very lucky to do an event with him in Moorish in Switzerland there, well, I wasn't doing an event with him. I was there at the festival with him, and so just one of the funniest men I've ever come across as well. But in this interview he did, he was asked about his earlier books, and he said, I read those books now and I cringe, because I think, well, not I cringe, but I can see where I would do it differently, and how I would write differently now. And he said, but what I know is, and what I accept is, that was the best book I could write at that time. And that is the exact place I'm in, where I'm saying, this is the best book I can write. And so I am happy with that. And who knows what'll happen? I have no control over it. But yes, the demons
I
are
mean,
in
I
you.
think as a reader and as a fan, and also, I mean, as a professional musician, but also a music fan, I actually find
Mm.
it super interesting to to go maybe backwards even with someone you discover. I mean, somebody will discover
Oh,
you,
mm,
4 or 5 books down the road, and then work
mm,
their way backwards to see uh, a movement,
mm.
or a path, and that can be. So even if you completely, let's say, would cringe at your first even 2 or 3
Yeah,
books, for a reader that discovers you later,
yeah,
it could be a total treasure trove, you
yeah.
know.
I totally agree. I
The
totally.
early Griffin. I mean, maybe they'll teach that in
That'd
school
be nice.
someday.
I absolutely agree. I've like a friend of mine who is a writer, and one of his early books, he's like, oh, I don't like that book, I don't like the book, and I'm like, God, that was one of my favorite books of yours. It's
Hmm.
just, each book it speaks differently to each reader, and to that place in which that reader is at that very moment. And so there is something that just gets them and gets inside them. And that's what's brilliant, that it is so subjective, and that it can have that effect, that the writer themselves might be thinking, I don't know how you think that is the best book, but that reader has found something in that book that is just magnificent and brilliant for them.
Here we got a lot of questions here actually on all the people that were in World here on YouTube. Anthrochick says, how much has Anne drawn on her work in charitable organizations to motivate her character development?
Mm,
And yeah, I should have said, I mean, you worked also with the Dyslexia Foundation, and the
that's
main
right.
character in the book has dyslexia, which I
That's
find
right.
fascinating. It's a really
Yeah.
important a character aspect of his character, because his son then uh, goes on to be a really successful journalist
Yes.
in America, and he
Yeah.
takes to books. And obviously, Maurice Hannigan, the main character, is a farmer, and he, of course, as everybody wants to their children to kind of go into the footsteps of them. And, in his case, he's
Yes.
also owning enormous amounts of land, of farmland, and he wants his only son to go into this field. Um, yeah, how much is the your work with people with ability,
Mm,
diverse
yeah.
people, how has that informed your writing?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit, because yeah, that Morris becoming dyslexic was as a direct result of me working for the Dyslexia Association. And um, it 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 came from, I remember this particular call came in. I shared the office with the people who were on the phones, on the main switchboard, and my friend had taken a call, and I could hear her say, "No, you're not stupid. You're not stupid," to whoever's on the other end of the call. And when she'd
Yeah.
finished, she said, that was a 70-year-old man. That was the first time he'd realized that he had dyslexia, or
Wow.
And so it was powerful moments like that, that I wanted to bring into the book, and also that appreciation of what people with dyslexia live with, what people with yeah, I mean, I've worked for many charities. I've worked for charities that work with asylum seekers and refugees, and with the traveller community here in Ireland, and with a lot of marginalised people through social and economic deprivation. So yes, it informs my work. a lot. I don't necessarily directly have, like, asylum seekers and refugees in my book, but I think what it gives is a humanity, an
Yes.
understanding of other people, and that's at my core. That wanting to reach inside people and understand what it is to be human, and to understand our flaws and our vulnerabilities, and seeing the bravery and the strength of people through my community development work, um, you know, has just been really important to try and paint that sometimes, not
See,
always.
no, I mean you're making as people here on the stream are saying, thank you and very poignant point. And I have also this the way you put this is so instructive because it doesn't even have to be overtly, you sneaking in, let's say, a refugee character.
Yes,
Maybe you'll do this in the future, but
perhaps.
what we do in the world does inform if you have a creative outlet. If it's hobbyist or professional, it doesn't matter. It will be infused by
Mm,
what you do in your day-to-day work in your professional life.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's important and it's nice, and it brings, it brings just, it brings something very special to a work, I think, when you can dig down deep into the humanity of who we all are, and how we suffer, but how we rise above and how we fall down again. And I just, they're the books I am drawn to. I'm drawn to books where there are deeply flawed people, and people who really are just trying trying their best,
And that is exactly because also here on my run sheet, I'm just looking, I have here just the keyword is Maurice Hannigan, a bad man, because he did something, in his youth, and there's a revenge part. He was
Yes,
bullied, and his whole life, you could say, a lot of the stuff that he does is sort of payback for the stuff that
absolutely.
happened to him as a young man, and
Mhm.
also the dyslexia plays into this too a little bit, but. Uh, my grandmother always used to say, ev- uh, what a lot of people say, everyone has their own cross to bear, and
Yeah.
you don't see it. And in the case of his, it doesn't excuse the bullying that's happening to the main character in the book, but the person who bullies him
Mm.
uh, is also really mistreated and abused, basically.
Yes,
So
yes,
it's the whole violent circle of violence that you're
yes,
describing there.
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
We can actually lead up to another reading. I just
Okay.
wanted to let people know who are watching this, um, that Strawberry behind the scenes is talking to Linden Lab engineers about the region. So please bear with us. And as soon as we're back up, we're going to go back to the venue. And after post game, we will do dancing. We have dancing in the barn. Uh, we have a special barn in Second Life. So, but this is working really well. Um, the excerpt. Oh, one quick question
Yeah.
before we read the other excerpt, because the dyslexia. Do you have a tip how to get people back? Because what you're describing, with this older man who has so internalized that he felt stupid, and we get this often here with the book club. People come through and they go like, I wanted to check this out, and then when you get into a conversation, very often you have a story where very early on in schools they've been told that they're slow,
Mm,
because the way we, and to this day, in what I'm observing, we teach reading in a way in schools that is just not good.
mm,
It's always
mm.
absorbing stuff fast and sort of
Yes,
regurgitating it, and then if you can't
yes.
keep up with that, you're
Yeah,
you're deemed sort of stupid, and a lot of teachers still kind of
absolutely.
do that. What
Yeah,
what
drives
can
me
what
nuts.
can we I don't know what the question is here. What can we do
Yeah, I don't.
uh,
Ooh.
to
I
bring people, maybe from an individual standpoint, how can we bring people back to the book, you know, th- to reading? If you encounter someone,
Oh, yeah.
randomly on the street or something.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, that is a really difficult one. If somebody has been constantly told that they're no good at it, and so therefore they don't want anything else to do with it.
We should just carry books around like the Hare Krishna people
Perhaps, yes, and giving
and
them
hand
out.
them out. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think just the only thing that I can say is that, there are, you know, you're never lost without a book. You are never on your own when you have a book. You're never lonely when you have
Yes.
a book. And so there's something about story. There's something about getting lost in the world that is created by a writer. It brings me joy. I wasn't good at English at school. In fact, it's something that, you know, I I kind of think, how the hell did I get here? How am I now? How did I become, the newcomer of the year in the Irish Book Awards? How did I manage that? Because I was never particularly good at English. And it's not that I didn't have dyslexia, but I wanted to be good at it, and I was just no good at it. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I don't know. I
But
suppose
good, you mean by good, you mean like getting good grades in what was
getting good
required.
grades. Yeah, I
Hmm.
absolutely. I couldn't do what was required. I couldn't do. I was not a good learn by rote person. I couldn't regurgitate what they needed in the style in which they needed it.
See, but that's
So
the issue. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess for me there was a while when I wouldn't have read that much. I wouldn't have been a fantastic reader when I was young, and certainly my experience in school wouldn't have led me to want to be. But yet I knew I really admired writers. And so after I did
Well,
my
because you're Irish and writers are
yes,
always also drunk
yeah,
and have a jolly good time. I'm sorry. Let me interrupt really
yeah,
briefly. We're back at Second Life. The
okay,
region, the island is back up. So, Anne, I would ask you, and I'm going to vamp a little bit here while you're doing this.
okay,
Just bring back up Second Life. Log in at your last location,
yeah,
and if you are coming out in a location that doesn't look like the pub, I will teleport you. You will get a
okay,
teleport message from me. So, and as Anne is doing this, let me just remind people that you are listening or watching a still image of the Second Life Book Club with me, Draxtor Dupre, and we have our guest today is Anne Griffin with her debut novel, When All Is Said. And When All Is Said is an interior monologue of an 84-year-old man who is sitting at a bar and he's toasting to five people, the five people in his life that are important to him. And we learn about his hardship, we learn about his struggles in life, we learn about the beauty, his marriage. For all we know, was a very happy one. His wife had passed away 2 years um, before the story takes place. And I see Anne, and Anne is right here, and Anne can hop on the chair, and then we're
oh,
ready to go.
okay,
And take your time. Just click on the ball, turn around, um, and let me just tell the viewers also that Anne is uh, what is fascinating. What we talked about earlier is, and I would just want to reiterate that there is never a time that is too late. I think that this is a really important message. If you have the creative urge and you want to pursue this or whatever you want to pursue in the creative realm. Um, Sorry, I'm just telling the producer that we can switch on Second Life because we're all the pub is full. All the alcoholics are back. Very nice. By the way, I'm not promoting alcoholism at all.
yeah,
I don't drink I'm a teetotaler. I truly am. I don't even drink coffee anymore. I highly recommend it. It's very nice to be um, to be sort of have the biological rhythm um, regulate you rather than substances. But so let's go to excerpt number two, and
okay,
and this is and again the book is funny. It's all about being human, but it's also heart wrenching. And again, the main character Maurice, he has an older brother Tony, and Tony passes away. He dies from tuberculosis in 1946 when the main character is 16 years old. And Tony is the older brother, and he's very important. He's a strong person, a huge influence, and this is the first encounter that Maurice has as a 16-year old about the randomness of life, and the way you weave this into the story is brilliant, because this sort of, I call it randomness of life, where there is just no rhyme or reason. His father suffers from this as well, but his mother suffers from this as well. And a little spoiler here: the main character Maurice Hannigan talks to the people who he lost in his life as ghosts. I don't know if they talk back, but he sees them and he talks to them. But we're gonna
Mm.
read the scene where we find out that Tony is actually um, dead.
Mm.
Tuberculosis is brutal. He really kind of sort of wastes away, becomes thinner, and lies in his bed. Oh, and make sure to press your speak button on the bottom. Sorry, um, and press your speak button in Second Life so the in-world folks can hear you. Uh,
Yes, here
so a
I am
couple of
again.
things. So Maurice and his mom, they work at the Dollards, which are
Hmm.
the rich folks next door. I guess they're super rich. They have a huge house. They own land, and Maurice works there since age 10. The mother works in the kitchen. Again, the Hannigans are the poor farmers, but the Dollards are kind of the a-holes. Um, and there's conflict with the patriarch Hugh, and there's conflict with his son Thomas, who is the
Mm.
bully here. And here in this scene, we know that Tony Steph is imminent, and Maurice and the mother, they have to work, though. They have to work at the Dollards. Amelia Dollard runs the kitchen. She runs the whole place, and she goes, you can't leave now. And
Mm.
that's where we're going to start this scene. And again, this
Great.
is Maurice talking in his head
Hmm.
to his son.
That's right. Okay. I never saw my mother look so thin as in those last few weeks before he died. Up at the crack of dawn, even though she might have sat by Tony's side the whole night, catching snatches of sleep through his distress. We'd be gone over the fields then to earn the money to buy the rich food to save him. The only morning she asked to be excused was the day he died. I can't possibly do without you today, Hannah, Amelia Dollard said as she fiddled with the flowers in her hallway where my mother waylaid her eyes never once rising from the carpet. I've told you. Thomas is coming home and bringing the Lawrences, his school friend, and his parents. They've been so good to him through all of this, taking him on weekends and such. So we can't let him down. Poor Thomas. We don't often see him. And what was Hugh away? Well, it's the only time he can get home. And we simply cannot do without your apple tarts. You've made enough, I hope. Less of an inquiry than a demand, Amelia Dollard strode away, leaving my mother alone, looking at her hands clasped on her aproned stomach. I was tempted to call out to her. I heard it all, you see, through the open front doors. I'd been ordered to assist the gardener with the flower boxes in the windows at the front of the house. Instead, I watched my mother turn, tilting her head back in an effort to reverse the flow of tears and walk back to the kitchen. It was Jenny who arrived later, as my mother, with the mounds of baking complete, put on her coat to leave. She caught her at the back door, she told me that evening. I heard my mother's cry. Her wail rose above the rooftop, screeched over the tiles and down the walls to pound my head and shoulders as I trimmed the trees at the sides of the front door. I knew it was Tony. My legs weakened and I stretched a hand to a branch to hold me up. And at that very moment, a car pulled up to the house. I didn't turn my head, knowing who it was in an instant. I heard Thomas's boasts as he fussed with the car and the hall door. 1700s, maybe. Not exactly sure, but father would know. Unfortunately, he's not around today. London, you know, bit of business. This way, this way. He never acknowledged me. Small mercy. If he'd as much as breathed in my direction, I might finally have landed in one. When the hall door shut, I spat on the ground after him, cursing them to hell. I was gone then. Half crazed, I ran the long way home at some speed, not wishing to pass my mother or sister. I burst through our front door, then into Tony's room. No, Morris, my father shouted as he struggled to hold me back when I reached the bed. He held my arms, but like a man possessed, I kept lurching forward. Eventually, I wrangled free of him, firing my father back against the wall, and fell onto Tony's frame. There was nothing but bone, no meat, no hefty muscle, nothing. Every scrap wasted away. I lay there, holding his skeletal arms, letting my anger go the way of his soul, up and up, until there was nothing left, just a pitiful murmur that felt like it wasn't mine. My father and May pulled me away when they heard my mother arrive. Her surviving children stood together watching her enter. It's an awful thing to witness your mother cry. You cannot cure, nor mend, nor stick a plaster on. It is rotten. I wanted to tear out the pain of it. It took every ounce of restraint I had not to run from the room and charge through the fields, damning those bastards, that bitch and her precious son, who had denied my mother her goodbye. My father stood above her with one hand on her shoulder and the other on her back. That weathered, veined hand moved up and down with the rhythm of her sorrow all afternoon, never once resting. His own grief in check. I wonder, as the years went on, when my father found himself alone, did the weight of Tony's loss stop him in the fields and lower him to his hunkers? Did he ever lay his hand on the earth to steady his body that heaved at the injustice of it all? But that evening, it was my mother's cries that filled the house. On it went for what felt like hours, thrashing at her small frame, refusing to recede until the priest came, and even then only quietening enough so she could hear the prayers. That night was the longest I've ever known, sleepless, save for snatches, filled with furious dreams in which I was running from something or someone. I could feel the panic in my chest when I woke each time in a startle, unsure of where I was, pushing myself up out of my mother's chair where I'd fallen asleep by the range. Finally, knowing I was at home, I'd settle back against the headrest and stare into the darkness, the emptiness of a life without Tony, my support, my rock.
Thank you, Anne. Wonderful. Big round of applause.
Oh,
This is a hard scene. There's a lot of hard scenes like this. Anne Griffin reading from When All Is Said, and we have been given a little bit more time by the producers uh, because of our um, little excursion into the placeholder image, and the world has collapsed, but now the world is back. I mean, that's what a virtual world is for. And you know what, I would actually, if you could read the next excerpt,
yeah.
which ties right into this,
Oh,
because
yeah.
this is sort of again the first sort of big trauma for him, but also his mother. I mean, the son dying, for every parent, this is the worst that you could ever imagine.
Mm,
um and here, this excerpt is where he meets the granddaughter of the Dollard uh, patriarch
that's
Hugh.
right.
Her name is Emily. She runs a hotel, and the hotel is the Dollard's former home, where Maurice had to work, and where
Mm,
he and his mother had to work, and where his mother was denied the day or the time to be with her dying son. So Maurice meets Emily, and he goes in there, and Emily talks to him and opens up to him,
mm,
to sort of the enemy of the family. And one other thing that is important: Emily's father uh, passed away, and he was the one that wanted to turn this residence into a hotel,
mm,
and it became a hotel. And well, a good hotel. We don't know if it's successful. This is part of this excerpt, but so Emily is this young woman who takes over the hotel. But Emily also reminds our hero Maurice of his stillborn daughter Molly,
mm,
who died right at
mhm.
birth,
Yes.
and that's why they only have this one son that he's talking to in his head. So when he goes in there and he sees Emily, he is reminded of his own daughter, and this is the scene
Yeah.
that we're hearing now, Anne.
Great. Thank you. Okay. They hate you, Mr. Hannigan, she said after swallowing her second mouthful. You paid them far too little for far too much. That's what they've always told me. They're not wrong. I'm a businessman. I'll not apologize for that. Surprisingly, she gave me the briefest of smiles. She was more composed now, sitting back in her seat. She gestured to a chair opposite her at the other side of the desk. I took it and sat as she tapped her fingernails at her glass, watching the liquid shiver under the impact. It killed him. This bloody place, this bloody dream of his, it killed my father, she continued, not looking at me, but at the whisky before tipping it back, shuddering, and laying the empty glass on the desk before her. We are in debt up to our necks, she added, speaking to the empty tumbler. And my mother. Well, what can I say? She's broken-hearted and totally out of it. She can't face the mess, losing money hand over fist in a hotel that no one will want to buy. You're trying to sell? Oh, it's not on the market, not yet anyway. That's what I'm here for, to try to figure it all out. Mother's drugged up to the eyeballs, so it's just me. It's all up to me. She looked about her, surveying her empire. And look at the fine job I'm doing, she laughed as her hand gestured enthusiastically in my direction, while those big clear eyes of hers came to rest on mine. Confessing all to the enemy. Does that make you happy, Mr. Hannigan? She asked, leaning into the desk towards me, to know that we are at last about to fall. What more had I expected from her? To be forgiven for what I'd done to them, for the satisfaction I had felt as each piece of land they lost became mine, for checking the land registry in the county council every year or so to see my name as owner of what once was theirs. Did I expect this young girl, who I imagined as my own not 10 minutes ago, to say none of that mattered? That her father's death could not be laid at my door? I sat there, my whisky not yet gone, letting the silence, save for the hum of the computer sitting on her desk, fill the room. I swirled the last of the liquid in the glass and watched it catch at the sides and fall to the bottom before swirling it again and again and again, like a child with a spinning top, mesmerized by its simplicity. And when at last the time came to either leave, without your surprise holiday, or bite the bullet and reply, I looked at her, took the last of my whisky, and said this. I worked here once, you know. Yes, Mother mentioned it. It wasn't a particularly nice place. Your great-grandfather Hugh was not an easy man. And as for your great-uncle Thomas, let's just say, these men knew how to throw a punch. This here, see this? I pointed to my scar. That was him. Oh, God. Her brief glance and wince at my face was enough to lower her head and to give a sigh that felt more hopeless than any of her words gone before. She raised her fist to her mouth and looked off to a future I imagined she neither wanted nor asked for. I saw the tears well and glisten again. It was then that I felt regret for drawing her in on a history that was not really hers, to suggest a blame she had no power over. How much do you need? I asked. It took her by surprise as much as it did me, but there it was. How much do I need for what? She asked, slumping back into her chair, wiping at her eyes. To keep this place going. You said you wanted to sell it. How much not to? And that's how it began, my foray into the hotel trade. As simple as that.
Yeah, wonderful. That's Anne Griffin reading from When All Is Said. We should have said, I think we alluded to it, that Maurice Hannigan is buying up all the land,
Yes,
and he's
he's
really,
loving it.
I mean, he has a very good business sense, and
Yeah,
again, he comes from this poor family, but has a very good business sense. Really focuses on that, and is very aggressive, and
mm,
also driven, of course, by this really tough childhood where he gets abused by these dollars, and he's buying up everything around them
yeah,
until the last thing that they have left, basically,
it's the house.
is this hotel.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, really, really wonderful. We're running up against the clock. We have
okay.
few minutes left, and I want to encourage folks to put their questions into local chat. I'm watching all the different streams. We have one tiny um, reading left from it's a very fun, whimsical bit where Maurice meets his future wife,
Oh yeah.
and yeah,
Oh,
as someone who is known as a charming person like myself with the ladies in my day, back in the day. I'm joking. This is another joke I've been working on, but it's just this is a tough room. I mean, at least we have a room. I mean, we have a room now. It's a tough one, but
the
actually, quick.
glass is half full, isn't that it?
You mentioned earlier that that you were negotiating with with a science fiction
Oh yeah, my
publisher,
my first agency, yeah.
right? And so, just very briefly, where do you stand on genre fiction versus literary fiction? I actually looked this up in Wikipedia. It says that literary fiction has, I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but it says that it has more value for the
Oh,
about the human condition. And and I'm an omnivore. I come from a little bit, I say this every week, I come a little bit from sort of a snobbish background. My mother was very much about high literature. I don't blame her. I have to thank her for introducing me to good stuff, but it was also something where she dismissed a lot of the sci-fi stuff that I read as a
mm.
teenager, and she just thought that that was garbage.
Oh,
So, I mean, you're writing literary fiction. Why do you hate sci-fi so much?
I don't hate sci-fi. I do
What
not
did
hate.
David Mitchell say about it? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't hate sci-fi, and I think all of these genres work very well for the publishing and for book selling because we can categorize, and it's easy to sell because you can put things into categories. For example, like where did chicklit come from? Chicklit came from an ability for booksellers to be able to say that's the kind of section over there you're looking for if you're into those kind of books.
Mm,
Um, Basically, books are about entertainment. It is what the individual enjoys. No genre should be, criticized for not being, having a better insight into the human condition. I mean, yes, wonderful. If that's what if you want to see that in a story, brilliant, then there is literary fiction. But that is not what reading is to me. Um, Reading to me is enjoyment in losing yourself in the words of the author and in the storytelling. That's what it's about. And if
right.
you are satisfied by the story, then then it has worked. Then fiction has worked. That's what it is about. I am not into this, oh, sci-fi, is better than, horror, or, literary fiction is better than commercial fiction. It doesn't matter. It's the reader's experience. That's all that matters.
My
So,
mother thought that Conan the Barbarian really taught me not much about the human condition other than I have to be strong and have half-naked ladies by my side and a big sword. But I digress. We have a question here from Stella in the audience. Stella asks, I noticed you have three editions of your book, Irish, UK, and US.
that's
What's the
right.
difference in each, if any? Also, did you get to choose the cover? This is a question that comes up often with the cover. And you asked this earlier also. The German edition is, I think, it's a great cover. But yeah, please.
So, the reason, so it's very unusual to have an Irish cover different from a UK publisher, especially if you have a UK publisher, if they're your main publisher. But it's just, there is an Irish arm of that particular UK publisher, and they felt that that particular cover would work better for the Irish market. Um, so the thing is that, in the 20 different foreign languages, in the US, where my book is published, in Canada, these are each different. They each are separate publishing houses, independent publishing houses from each other, and they have a right to choose whatever cover they want for their particular market. You do do get to look at the cover before it's finalized and to voice any kind of worries you might have about it. And sometimes that can be very technical. Like one particular language publishing house, they had the wrong kind of dog. There's a dog, a gorgeous dog that appears in this book called Gearstick, and he's an Irish collie dog, and very particular look that a
Mhm.
farmer would have here. But this particular country gave me like a corgi or something. And I was like, that isn't going to work.
Oh boy.
So yes, you do have, because sometimes you do need to see, no, that actually isn't going to be right. That's completely wrong. So, and you do get to say, sometimes you get to choose. They might say, we're thinking of this cover or this cover. Which one do you like? But very often, for me, mainly, I think these guys generally know what they're doing in their own particular countries. And,
Yeah.
unless I had a real strong hatred of a cover, I'm pretty much going to say, look, if you guys feel for marketing reasons and that it'll appeal to people over there, great, go for it.
Well, this is something where we had past authors say, they felt really bad about certain covers, and some people say, I don't really care. This is really going to be interesting with all these other countries where your book is going to be translated, all these other languages translated. This is going to be fascinating. Uh,
Yeah, some
uh, uh,
beautiful ones out there.
the we had a guest here, Will Wiles, and he was also he wasn't a fan of the German title of one of his books.
Okay.
So that's another thing where uh, translations where people obviously don't have a lot of control.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. Over the titles, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
I read I read his book in German. I thought it was really good, and I read it in English, and I thought the translation was very good. But the title was certainly a little bit strange. It's a book called The Way In, which is amazing. It's kind of a horror novel.
Mm.
I'm going to completely digress, but folks, look into that. It's also in our back catalog in on the YouTube playlist. You can find it. Um, let's see, there was a question. Oh yeah, here was another question. Don't forget. Did the real coin story inspire the whole book?
No, the real coin story came at a later stage.
People
Uh,
don't know what this is, but we're not going to
no,
spoil it.
it's great though. It weaves its way through the story, and it's really good. This story, as it unfolds, and you realize the origin of this coin, and you realize the importance of this coin to the Dollard family, and what it represented in terms of the very, very difficult lives that they had, that Morris knew nothing about. So that coin story came later because I wanted Morris to steal something from the Dollards that for the rest of his life
Mhm,
binds him to this family.
mhm,
And it's not just about his hatred of them, or more hatred of what they did to him and his family, but I wanted something else. I wanted some other little mystery. And so I came across this story of the coin, and this coin actually does exist, although I've manipulated it to suit my novel. But it's a really interesting story. I don't know if I could. It's a King Edward the Eighth coin. And why it's interesting, why I loved it, was because it was called the coinage that never was, because King Edward the Eighth was the king who abdicated, because of he wanted to be with Wallace Simpson, and so it's an interesting, quirky little story that winds its way through the whole of the novel. And why I love it is, one of the reasons I love it as well is because the idea that this coin once was in the palace of in Britain, in Buckingham Palace, and here it is in a farmer's pocket in Ireland, in
mhm,
County Meath. So that's
mhm.
why.
So that coin really exists, and folks need to read the book. The coin is obviously super important, and there are many, many times in Maurice's life where he could have told the truth is not that he lied, but he just didn't say something that is very important and impacted other people's lives. And because of his grudge, because of this
Mm,
revenge, he did choose not to say it, and that is it really informs his drive to kind of come clean at the end of his life. Um, this is a perfect segue. This is the end of the show. Um, and thank you so much,
oh,
and thank you, audience.
pleasure.
One wonderful audience. We went through a lot. We went through the world collapsing. We went through the world coming back, and we kept going. And yeah, and it's a big thank you. We
Oh,
usually
thank you.
do a post game for 15-20 minutes. We'll go over to the barn and do a little barn dance, and people can ask Anne questions in world. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, you can try to come in. We do have we can bring in, I think, 15-20 more people. I'll open it up to a little bit more people. Thank you to the audience. Big thank you. Get this book
Yes.
for Christmas.
Oh,
Thanks to the team. Thank you, Arieto. Big thanks, Arieto, put the venue together. And oh yeah, next week, of course, we are a machine here on the book club. Next week is a bigger panel. Next week we'll have. Let me look this up. Here we go, and I'll put the image right here. Next week we'll have a panel of four about social media. They've all written books about social media, three nonfiction books. Claire Evans wrote a book about women's contribution to technology and to the internet. Joanne McNeil about the history of social media. Jenny Odell wrote a book about how to do nothing. That's a book I got to read because I don't know how to do that. And Jonathan Lethem is a uh, well-known novelist, and he wrote a post-apocalyptic dystopian novel that is also a utopian novel that has two Hollywood executives thinking they are actually in a movie. It is hilarious, and I'm looking forward to this panel. This is next week. Um, and we'll do the last reading post game, Anne, I think, right? So let's wrap the show that the producers can go home, and then we'll do one more reading. Thank
super.
you, Anne, and thanks everyone. And I'll see you all next week, next Wednesday at 12 o'clock on the Second Life Book Club.